Ever since the first few days after the assassination, various agents have been telling us that the Kennedy assassination was solved, that this was an old issue, that we should get over it and leave it in the past, and so on. At the same time, the issue continues to be news. A recent example, and not the most recent example, is the October 16th publication by the New York Times of an article that we'll post at the website describing how the CIA continues to refuse to release files that are obviously extremely relevant to the question of who shot the president and whether or not the CIA was involved. Now, you need to recall that in 1991, the Congress, under impetus from the Oliver Stone film, JFK, ordered all the relevant files to be released. President Clinton ordered all the relevant files to be released, and the Assassinations Records Review Board was established to ensure that this happened. And, what is now 18 years later, the CIA still, boldly, in your face, takes the position that there are files that it just is not going to release. The files in question in this New York Times article deal with an agent, actually a high-ranking CIA officer, named George E. Ioannidis. Files have already been released, no doubt by accident, indicating that Mr. Ioannidis was deeply involved in the supervision of the CIA's anti-Castro Cubans, and most particularly of Cubans with whom Lee Harvey Oswald had several contacts in the days leading up to the assassination. But what has so far been released merely indicates Ioannidis' involvement without any details. In 1978, when the House Committee on Assassinations was reviewing the evidence in the Kennedy assassination, they paid particular attention to the possible involvement of the CIA's anti-Castro Cubans, especially those that were involved in attempts to assassinate Castro. Mr. Ioannidis was assigned by the CIA to be the liaison to this House Select Committee. He was supposed to be helping, but his real assignment was to limit what the House Committee might learn about the CIA's activities. Dan Hardaway was a lawyer who worked for the committee at the time, and he told the New York Times how Ioannidis blocked the committee's access to critical files. Hardaway says that Ioannidis, quote, handed me a thin file and just stood there. I blew up and he said, "This is all you're going to get," unquote. Robert Blakey was the chief counsel for the House Committee, and he told the New York Times that if he had known who Ioannidis was, he would have sworn him in on the spot as the supervisor of this group that the House Select Committee was trying to investigate through these documents, and he would have questioned him under oath as a material witness to matters related to the assassination rather than relying upon him to assist in identifying important documents. With Ioannidis' help and the help of the new CIA director, George Bush, the committee investigation was frustrated and then shut down. But 16 years later, in 1994, this battle for the truth in the murder of the president was taken up again, with the creation of the Assassinations Review Board, which was set up by the Congress and then by Clinton to identify relevant documents for release. And again, Ioannidis was assigned by the CIA to help the board, not to find any documents. Of course, he was ostensibly assigned to help them, but no one on the review board has any doubt that his real duty was to block them in their efforts to discover and release relevant documents. And now, today, November 2009, the CIA continues to refuse to release these documents. Now, if you haven't seen Dark Legacy yet, allow me to fill in the blanks a little bit. 5 days after the assassination, J. Edgar Hoover wrote a memo entitled Assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, in which he identifies, quote, Mr. George Bush of the CIA as the supervisor of, quote, misguided anti-Castro Cubans, unquote. E. Howard Hunt, the leader of the Watergate burglars, was a frontline supervisor of these misguided anti-Castro Cubans that Ioannidis also supervised, and a Florida jury found that Hunt was not slandered by a magazine article that said that he was in Dallas on the day of the assassination and that he participated in the assassination. Hunt's son, St. John Hunt, has identified his father in photographs taken of men arrested in the railroad yard behind the grassy knoll where the fatal shot was fired from. So the issue of these Ioannidis files is no small stuff. And I think it's instructive to look at some of the statements that the CIA is making today in regard to their current present-day refusal to release documents that they were ordered by law to release 18 years ago. The agency is withholding 295 specific documents from the 1960s and is refusing to confirm or deny the existence of many others, saying their release would cause, quote, extremely grave damage, unquote, to national security. The CIA has written in its official court filing in this case that, quote, the CIA's methods of defeating or deterring covert actions in the 1960s and 1970s can still be instructive to the United States' current enemies, unquote. Let me rephrase that just a little bit. the CIA is arguing in their court filings that these files would reveal things about what they did in the 60s that would still be instructive to our understanding of what they are doing today. So I think we have it then from the mouths of the CIA's own lawyers that their activities in murdering the president are today instructive regarding their current activities. Gerald Posner also gets quoted in the New York Times and gives his insights about what these matters mean. Posner wrote the book Case Closed, where he argues that we should no longer bother to investigate these matters because the evidence of a lone nut is just so overwhelming. And in this article, he wants to assure you that, quote, if there really were a CIA plot, no documents would exist. Most conspiracy theorists don't understand this, unquote. So what is he saying? He's telling us that we shouldn't get excited about such things as getting files released because all the relevant information will have been destroyed. And while I'm sure that there's a great deal of truth to that, I think that these people, the enemies of democracy, are essentially lazy and incompetent. So they are reluctant to release anything for fear that they may have missed some critical piece of evidence, and they would prefer that we all wait another 30 years before they reveal that they have then destroyed everything.